17 years ago, but it still lingers in my head to this day. I was a new therapist, fresh out of grad school, barely 26, working in a community mental health clinic. I was eager, idealistic, and a little naive. I believed everyone could change, especially if they wanted to. His name was David. He was 34. Court ordered therapy after an incident with his girlfriend. Nothing too specific in the paperwork, just domestic disturbance and anger management required. When I met him, he seemed quiet, calm, sad even. He talked about his childhood, his dad hitting him, the drinking. He said he wanted to be better, that he never meant to hurt her, he just got angry. He cried in one of our first sessions, told me he hated himself for what he did. I believed him. I didn't report him. I could have. There were things he said that should have triggered a mandatory report, but he always found a way to soften it, to reframe it. I thought he was self-aware. I thought he was trying. 3 months in, the court lifted his mandate. He'd been consistent, calm, cooperative, no red flags, at least not on paper. They asked if I believed he was fit to leave therapy. I said yes. I signed the discharge papers. In our final session, he shook my hand and said, "Thanks for not giving up on me." I smiled, told him he was ready. But even then, something in his body language felt off, and I ignored it. 3 weeks later, I saw his name in the news. He'd killed her. Not in a fit of rage. He strangled her while she was sleeping, sat next to her for hours before turning himself in. I don't remember much from that day. I remember staring at my computer screen, reading the article over and over, wanting for it to change. I told my supervisor everything. She said I followed procedure, that I wasn't responsible. But here's the part I've never said out loud. He told me he was going to do it. Not directly, not clearly, but in one of our last sessions, he said something I keep replaying in my head. He said, "Sometimes I think the only way to stop being the monster is to make sure no one ever sees me again." And I knew what he meant. I felt it. So I nodded and said something soft, therapeutic. I thought I was helping. I wasn't. After the murder, I was questioned and investigated. The court wanted to know if I had failed, if my decision to discharge David played a role in what happened. They went through everything, my notes, our sessions, the reports I'd written. Their own experts evaluated him afterward. They diagnosed him with ADHD, borderline personality disorder, narcissistic traits, and possibly psychopathy. It all made sense in hindsight. But during our sessions, I saw none of that. No signs, no outbursts, no manipulation I could recognize. He was focused, respectful, careful with his words. He made me believe he was controlling his anger better. I told the court that he manipulated me, that I had truly believed he was rehabilitated. I lied. I saw signs, not of mental disorders, but signs that I should have reported. And as I said it, I looked at David for the last time. He was calm. He looked back at me and smiled. He was sentenced to life in a psychiatric hospital. If you're asking for the motive, I don't know. Might have been because she called the police the day he hit her. Might have been for revenge, but for such a deranged person, it wouldn't surprise me if he killed her for the satisfaction. I know where the girlfriend parents live. I know their names. I even know where her gravesite is, but I've never had the gut to tell them. To tell them I was a part of her murder. I still have the article files in my drawer. I want to throw them away, but I can't. I still blame myself every day because I knew he wasn't rehabilitated. I might not have been the one who killed her, but I let him walk out free. I signed the papers. I cleared him. David is currently dead. He committed S-word by overdosing on his medicine a long time ago. I found a key and extra mat under my doormat that I didn't put there. Some context. About a month ago, I was supposed to go on a trip and I had a friend coming to feed my cat, but they were busy, so I was just going to put the key under my mat until they got off of work. Not super smart, I know, but it wasn't a long time and I have a security system. In my complex, the front doors lead directly outside rather than into a hallway. When I pulled up my mat, I found a second doormat and what looks like a car key that both aren't mine underneath. There isn't a brand on it. It looks like a spare to me, but it's definitely a car key. Now, I want to add a detail that I think is relevant. I was robbed about 6-ish months ago. While they have caught the guy, he also is facing a bunch of auto theft charges. I'm wondering if A, this is connected and I should call the prosecutor. They send me info about hearings all the time as his trial isn't over yet. B, someone tagged me. Or C, something that I haven't thought of yet. Interesting to think about. And then the OP gives us an update 4 years later. Someone made a comment on the thread saying, "Hey man, I'm so curious. Did you ever figure this out or get a better idea of what was with the key and extra doormat?" And sadly, the OP said this: "Not really. I personally think it was the guy who robbed me 6 months prior, and it was never retrieved because he was arrested about 3 months prior to me finding the key. The complex I lived in at the time was very large and identical, so it was easy to get lost in there if you weren't paying attention. I think he left it intending to come back and steal a car, maybe mine, but he got locked up and couldn't afford bail. He was eventually sentenced to 5 years and seems to be serving the full sentence per my victim notifications. He had a long history of theft/car theft and drug charges, as it was, and many comments told me this was a blank car key often used to do that very thing. So I moved out of there as soon as my lease was up. Thanks for asking, kind stranger." And so we never really got an answer, but that seems like a good assumption that the OP made. Something is happening. I live out in the middle of nowhere. I moved here 2 months ago and my parents are coming to visit me. When I searched my house on Google to give them directions, I noticed a small box behind my house, which seems to be a trailer of some sort. I own a lot of land out here. It's my property. I own about 3 square miles. Now, I went out a few minutes ago and the trailer is a 3 to 4 minute walk into the woods. There's a light on in the trailer, but there's no road or anything that connects it. It's pretty deep in the woods. The road I live on goes far out and I'm the last house on this street. I'm thinking about going to investigate. Should I? Here is a layout of my property. The trailer seems to be in decent condition. Not the best condition, so let's say fair condition. Yes, but I'm kind of scared somebody is living in it. It's known that homeless people take shelter in old barns out around here. Yep, I have a shotgun and a rifle and a few handguns. The woods are deep and heavy. Tons of weeds and shit. It's hard to get through. Well, it's possible they are using some power source rather than country power, such as a generator or something. I'm not very rich. This property costs about 25 grand with the land. It's in the middle of nowhere. The closest McDonald's is an hour away. The closest Walmart is a good 20 to 30 minutes. The biggest town near me has a population of 15,000 people, and that's 30 minutes away. I have 3 square miles and never been anywhere except the barn on my property. There is a river somewhere on it, but I've never been to it. I have no clue, to be honest. I know a friend of mine had a whole city of homeless people living in the woods on his property a mile from civilization and tents. I wouldn't doubt if there's a homeless camp somewhere on my property too. Anyways, I'm gonna go check it. It takes 3 to 4 minutes to get there, so I'll be back in like 15. Alright guys, sorry to break the bad news. It turns out somebody is in fact living there and has been living off the land for around a year now. When I walked up to the house, I saw a shadow looking out the window, so at that point, I really had no choice but to go up and knock. So I did, and it was a man in his late 40s or early 50s. He admitted that he was stealing power from me. However, other than that, he has been living off the land and even has a garden and really hunts for food. I'm probably not going to evict him or anything. I could care less as long as the guy's friendly. I told him to come over tomorrow and we can talk. I was going to take some pictures, but it was dark and he would know I was taking pictures because of the flash. I didn't want to anger him or something. So I guess I'm going to talk with him in the morning. I will most likely let him stay. Sorry for the boring ending. Nobody died tonight. But wait, there's more. Well, fuck, now I heard a gunshot. I didn't shoot off a gun and it sounded like he was from a distance. He wasn't shooting at me. Somebody's knocking at my door. I see two shadows, not one. This guy's not alone. I'm not answering the door. I'm staying in my house. I have a shotgun and I'm in a good position. I have a handgun and assault rifle as well. I'm in the corner so I don't have to watch my back. I fired a warning shot from my handgun and they are now yelling at me. I'm not entirely sure what they are yelling at. I shot at my wall. They are ugly anyways and need repainted. Fuck, they just broke my window now. I'm just shooting the general area of where they are. They have not fired back at me except from the gunshot I heard earlier. I have now called the police and they are on their way. They should be here in 15 to 20 minutes. I shot one and killed one. The other is retreated. The police are on their way, but one of them is on the porch with a gunshot wound to the chest. I'm gonna take a picture real fast for you guys. I'm kinda scared to go out and get a picture, so I hope a picture through the window is okay. Guys, my house is on fucking fire. The other guy lit it on fire. I'm now in my car going down the road. Also, to be clear, I'm not driving and using 4chan. I'm stopped. The guy doesn't have a car, so I drove away and parked up the road a bit. I'm gonna get a picture of the smoke coming from my house. Picture of the fire. I'm sorry, a timestamp is kinda dark. I have a shitty phone. The police are on the scene along with a few fire trucks. They got here pretty fast. Much faster than they said. I actually parked a little away from the house. To be fair, I'm not really worried about the guy. I have a gun and I will just shoot him. I think he's on the run now. I don't think he's gonna wait for the police. They brought 2 police cars and 1 ambulance. I told them I was being shot at, so I guess they went all out. I'm not really on my phone, I'm on my tablet. Would you like a picture of it as well? I told you I was on my phone because it's easier than saying I'm on my tablet. My tablet doesn't have a camera, my phone does. Guys, I'm being detained and I have been asked to get out of my car. Sorry, I'm being arrested, it seems. Might just be temporary thing, but the cop isn't taking no for an answer. Sorry. Watch the news and mourning for this. Now we wait. Godspeed, OP. Well, I guess since this is becoming more of a spooky camping thread, I'll post mine. Since it's kind of long, I'm not gonna green text. I was in the Boy Scouts until about 6th grade. In the summer before I quit, I went to a summer camp in a muggy Florida marsh savanna area. If you've ever been to Florida in the summer, you know it gets ridiculously hot and humid and rainy. So the summer camp was a complete disaster weather-wise, but me and a few friends didn't like it for a very different reason. Now, each camp had a colossal pavilion in the center, surrounded by assorted palmettos and tents. These tents were A-frame style permanent tents atop rotting pallets, which made the whole camp look like an abandoned military base. These A-frames were made of disgusting 20-plus-year-old tarps that insulated really well. This was a fucking nightmare in South Florida because moisture plus heat would stay in each tent and make each night a living hell for its residents. Add mosquitoes the size of your ball sack, and the entire campout was a disaster. Our scoutmaster was a giant douche, so he made us earn a minimum of 10 merit badges that week, so that meant we had to attend 10 classes to earn them. These classes took place in screened pavilions around the main mess hall at the center of the giant campground, with some of the bigger merit badges, whittling, archery, next to the mess hall, and the smaller, less important ones, birdwatching, electricity, were only accessed by a single dirt trail and a 10-minute walk. I'm a pretty natural leader, so I led one of those inner circle kind of clubs within my troop, called the Blind Koalas or some other stupid name, so we could have a koala bear with glasses and a cane flying over our camp like the little jokesters we were. I convinced my fellow koalas to take 10 super easy merit badges so we could only get done early, and we snuck our Game Boy Advances into camp so we could hang out in the woods and play our new Pokemon games. Ruby and Sapphire had just come out. My friends were all for it, so we did just that. We snuck out really fucking far into the woods outside the camp, off the regular path and into the savannah. We made it out at about 3 o'clock. But before we started to play our game where no one could find us, we saw a really rundown house. When I say house, I don't mean a cabin, or even a concrete block where the Rangers live. I mean full-on chimney and porch, suburban home just plopped in the middle of the fucking woods like a bad Photoshop, with no roads leading up to it. This place would have looked perfect had it not looked like Father Time took a dump on it. It was kind of blocked by the pine trees, so we didn't see it coming out. We went up to the window on its porch, and peeked inside. Boxes piled above eye level filled the entire house, no furniture or anything, just boxes of what appeared to be magazines, newspapers, and other printed material. The only other thing besides these boxes was a broken wheelbarrow leaning against a window on the opposite side. We were about to open the door to go inside, no matter how scared we were, because we wanted to check out those boxes. Then the most blood-curdling noise ever came from the house. The only way I could describe it is like someone twanging the piano wire from the inside of the piano, so it came out twang, 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 twang. It was so unnatural and unnerving, we booked it the hell out of there and ran to the mess hall. Apparently, we had been gone for 2 hours, but it felt like 5 minutes. The sun hadn't even changed in the sky. They kept saying it was 5:30, but the sun was barely where it would be at 3. It didn't go down until 8 that night for some reason. It got so much worse though. When it got dark that night, it got really fucking dark. At 8, the sun just barely disappeared off the horizon. At 9, you wouldn't have remembered what the sun looked like. And we kept fire going and trying to calm our nerves after the house we found yelling at us. Eventually, we had enough Slim Jims and ghost stories and went to our grotty-ass A-frames. I was kind of fat back then, so I was eaten alive by mosquitoes every night, and I had placed a mosquito net over my cot to save me from their wretched onslaught. It did minimum amounts of protecting and acted as more of a shitty curtain. I tried going to sleep, but it was just so fucking hot in the A-frame, I had to remove everything but my boxer briefs to stay cool. About 2 in the morning, I think I heard a loud thonk from the next tent over. I jolt right up and tangle myself in my net and scramble on the rotting pallet to free myself. I ran through and fall into the conveniently placed ant pile underneath the pallet. I managed to save myself before I get eaten, but I was so groggy and so much adrenaline through my bloodstream, I barely knew what was going on before I heard another loud thonk a foot away. The A-frame collapsed on top of me and my bunkmate, and we crawled out from underneath. I looked next door to the other A-frames and watched them fall like dominoes, each with a sickening thonk as the pillars holding them up fell down. I could barely make out a tall figure in red and white dart from behind one of the tents to another, but I couldn't tell. It was too early in the morning to make a positive ID. It was chaos. My whole troop had collapsed A-frames, and the entire pillar to erect the fucking thing was broken. The piece to slide into the pallet had snapped clean off, and now these A-frames were old, but it's still pretty difficult to break a 4x4-inch block of wood in two with one swipe. I ran out in my boxer briefs to make sure everyone was okay, and we told our douche scoutmaster someone had knocked down every A-frame in the camp. We marched down to the camp ranger and told him, and he said he'll go out and help us find the guy who did it. About an hour and a half later, the camp director drives up in a Jeep with some sort of fat kid in a black ninja outfit in the back. He tells us the kid confessed to knocking them over, and it's a mystery solved. Everyone came forth and called bullshit, mostly because the agreed upon profile for our suspect was a tall, probably 6'5" or so lean guy in red and white. The ranger waved it off as some kind of joke and said he had a confession and he was going to get everything sorted out by morning. We tried finding the house again the next day and couldn't find it. I was about to just shrug and say fuck it when my friend who was in the first A-frame to get knocked over came up to me at dinner on that last night. He was kind of nervous to talk to me and hasn't really been himself, and he told me he smelled something really fucking shitty before he woke up that morning. He looked up and saw the figure staring at him, and he thought it was the weirdest fucking thing. It was a person. It wasn't a spooky skeleton or anything, but the guy was really fucking tall, with lanky ass arms, and smelled like straight up death and shit. So much he said he could see the stink lines coming off of him. He said the guy was obviously quite old and gray, but the weirdest thing was that he was wrapped in bandages and a headdress, like a fucking mummy. A mummy in South Florida. I laughed it off and just told him it was some kind of asshole fucking with us. He just sighed and continued to eat his gloop. The weirdest shit didn't start until we came home from camp. There were 10 people who had their tents knocked over, excluding me and my bunkmate, and out of those 10, 8 of them had burglars clean out their place out while camp. Only me and the kid who thought he saw a mummy were spared. His house burned down a month later. The fire department saying someone had thrown incendiary devices into the windows at night while they were sleeping. Even though there were no broken glass or open windows, I guess the patterns here had to do with houses. Nothing has really happened to my house. I moved a couple months after dropping scouts, and the last I heard my old house was still there. I honestly have no idea what the fuck any of it means, but it's creepy as shit to think about. No one I know from that troop is still in it. They dropped it around the same time as I did. I heard we all dropped a ton of weight too. None of us were fat anymore. And I've been told I look too skinny now. Did we drop scouts for the same reason? Maybe. I have no idea what to expect from it or this story. And I know it's shitty as fuck to end a story like that, but the only other creepy thing is that I find ants in my stuff all the time and it's annoying as hell. I like to think it has something to do with this, but in reality, it's probably another shitty thing to deal with in my life. I get bit a lot still, though, and have to cover myself with band-aids so I don't itch them all the time. I think I had a run-in with a skinwalker last night, and I'm afraid it might come back. This entire thing happened last night, and I still don't know how to feel about it. I'm honestly still shaken up. I'm afraid that my dogs might get hurt, or even my family. So I've come here in search of advice as to what I should do now. It must have happened around 8-ish. When my mom's girlfriend called me downstairs, she had asked me to help her burn some of the boxes we had lying around in the kitchen so we could clear up some space. We live in a pretty small house, 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom for 5 people. I have 2 younger sisters, one I share a room with, 12, and the other, 10, sleeps in the living room most nights. And we live with my mother, her girlfriend, who is very, very mentally ill, I'll mind you, and my dog Kobe, about 2 years old, Valentine, who we've had for 6 years, and their 3 puppies. So there really isn't a lot of room to go around, and we could use the extra legroom. So I agreed, and we took the boxes out from our house and into the backyard. Our backyard is the biggest in our small neighborhood and is not fenced in. We are also one of the only houses on the block that has a shed, which is identical to our next door neighbors. Our driveway reaches over to our shed, and since the yard is open, they both sort of connect. Anyway, while she was breaking down the boxes and lighting them on fire, I'm not permitted to use the lighter, I was putting Kobe out on the chain to use the bathroom. Don't worry, his chain doesn't reach all the way across to our yard, and he was far away from the fire, while Valentine is roaming around the yard. The fire goes fine, and we burn about 2 or 3 big boxes with no problem. Everything was very under control, and we were even having fun with it. Around the end of the fire, when the flames had started to fade away, Kobe started running back and forth from the driveway to near where we were, barking frantically and trying very hard to get off his chain like he was afraid and was trying to warn us of something. When this happened, I also noticed that Valentine was growling in the driveway. So I got up and walked over to him and see what was wrong. And I smiled and asked him, "What's the matter?" in that sort of baby voice. But while I was standing there, I got that feeling. You know, the one where you know you're not alone. I could feel someone's eyes looking right through me. I looked over in the direction of Valentine's barking, and I instinctively yelled, "Oh my God," at what I saw. There was this inhuman-looking thing, standing in the driveway only a few feet away from me. Despite having the light from the back door being open and all the fire nearby, this thing was completely black. All I could see was its bulging eyes staring right through me, never wavering. It was so thin and tall, standing much taller than the small shed at the end of the driveway, easily 7 feet tall. And God, I could just feel that something was completely off about this thing. Some voice in the back of my head was telling me, this thing wants to hurt. It's so angry. And it was like me and this thing were having a staring contest. I heard my mom's girlfriend ask me what was wrong, and I looked away for just a second and it was gone. Completely disappeared, but I could still feel its energy looming around. When I told my mom's girlfriend what happened, we put out the fire and we brought the dogs inside. I ran to my mom and told her the same thing I'd told my girlfriend, and she tried to give me logical explanations to what I saw, but none of them really made sense. She must have seen that I was afraid and wanted to comfort me, but her excuses gave me no comfort. After that, I went up to my room with Kobe and tried to shake it off that feeling that thing had left me with, but honestly, I couldn't. I was struggling for a while. I stayed up there talking with my boyfriend for maybe 15 to 20 minutes before I heard my mom calling for me from downstairs. Her and her girlfriend had gotten into a fight and she had locked herself in the bathroom. Mom was fine with it and simply told me to keep an eye on the food while she went to pick up my sisters from their friend's house. So I said okay and went to do so while she left out the front door. Not even 2 minutes later, my mom comes rushing back inside and I heard her walk into the hallway where the bathroom is and say, "Girlfriend's name. There's something standing outside watching the house." My heart sank. She finally believed me, so girlfriend comes out from the bathroom and says that she had seen the same thing trying to peek into the windows from the bathroom, and she immediately ran to her room to grab a metal bat She ran out the back door screaming, "If anybody's out here, I'll bash your fucking head in," at the top of her lungs. Regardless of the situation, my mom still had to pick up the kids, so I walked her out to her car, then quickly retreated back inside and grabbed a hammer from the closet. Kobe started slamming himself into the back door, screaming bloody murder out of absolutely nowhere. I'd never seen him do anything like it before, so reluctantly I put him on his chain so he could protect the girlfriend while she was out on the lookout. While this happened, I hid myself in the bathroom, since it's one of the only rooms in the house with a working lock, and I called my grandma, who was at work, and told her everything. She's a huge believer in this kind of stuff, just like I am, so she listened to what I had to say and tried to calm me down a bit, since I was absolutely losing my shit. I'm normally a pretty mature and rational person, but I just felt so unsafe and everything felt off. Just when things started to calm down, the girlfriend comes running into the house and tells me urgently that something had broken the basement window from the outside and she was afraid it had gotten into the house. So I hung up on my grandma after saying goodbye, had 911 on speed dial, and we went to check. Didn't see anybody. Searched around the house and nearby and found nothing. It was like this thing was taunting us. The kids and mom came back and still things had seemed to cool down, but I could still feel that off and uneasy feeling, like it wasn't actually gone. Like it was waiting for the right opportunity. Grandma had called me back to say that she would be taking me to her house for the night, as I'm homeschooled unlike my sisters and it wouldn't be an issue. The kids would sleep upstairs with doors locked, Kobe with them and the hammer I had from before. Grandma came and picked me up after work, and on the way to her house she told me that while I was explaining all this, the hairs on her arms had stood up and she could feel the negative energy that I was telling her about. Like she knew exactly how I felt when I said something was definitely wrong and unnatural about this thing that was tormenting us. Later on this morning, I got a call from mom saying that after I left, she had invited some friends over to keep her company, ones with conceal and carries, and she had went to grab something from the kitchen, which is where the back door is located, and she heard Kobe's chain rattling outside and something's weight shifting on the back porch right next to the door. When everybody was inside and Kobe was upstairs, I don't know. Laying in bed and thinking about it, I think that this thing was trying to latch itself to the dogs, and that's why Kobe felt the need to be outside. He's been keeping very close to me since I've come home, and I have been very wary about going outside by myself while it's dark. I just came here hoping that someone would offer some sort of advice as to what I should do. I've dealt with paranormal stuff practically my entire life, and this feels completely different. If anybody knows what I should do, please reach out or comment on this post. I'm desperate to protect my family. My girlfriend went. Something came into my town during the storm yesterday. Hey guys, I don't normally post here except to poke fun at people and bump interesting threads, but something happened to me yesterday that I need to talk about. Be me, living with folks in town near Chicago. Not a complete NEET yet. Do contract work as a network technician while studying at a local college. Mom works for a small telephone and internet company as a secretary. Small is in like 4 people. I know the owner pretty well. He'll often hire me for jobs. Nice guy. Get a call on Tuesday. They're moving to a different office nearby and need some networking gear organized and put into a new storage unit tomorrow. It's paid and I have nothing better to do since chickenpox is taking all my work away. I agree. Next day it's raining. Get a call and boss suggests I wait for it to let up so the boxes don't get soaked. Wait a while. Rain lets up a bit. I head out. Get there and start loading boxes into my mom's Ford since it's bigger than my car. Take them to storage units and get them nice and organized. Storage complex is between highway and about an acre of forested area. I worked at UPS for 2 years. This is nothing. Make a few runs, unit is looking nice, pick related, took around second run, and then he shows a picture of just the boxes in a storage unit, and he continues saying, while partway through with my third, the rain picks up like crazy. It's been raining all day and we've been getting flooded, but this was really heavy. Can't get boxes from my car to the unit in this rain, so I get comfy inside the unit, put on some jazz, don't judge me, and start working on fixing a MacBook for another client. Work for about 2 hours while I wait for the rain to clear up. Cozy. It just keeps getting worse. It's not very cold though, and only about 3 in the afternoon, so I'm fine hanging out. I finished with the Mac a while ago and am now just chilling. Then I start hearing smashing from nearby. Sounds like something hitting metal. Car crash on the nearby highway? No, it's coming from the other direction. I really don't want to go out and get wet. And then he provides a second picture because the first picture in the first thread was upside down for some reason. And he says, no clue why the image is upside down. Doesn't look like that in paint. Here's a screenshot of the image, I guess. And then he continues saying, whatever. Some asshole probably dropped something. This is a public area like 200 feet away from a busy highway. It's raining, but it's still the middle of the day. And I even saw other people earlier. Zero fear. Keep working. Keep hearing various banging noises. I'm going to feel like a real idiot if I find out tomorrow that someone was hurt out there and I don't bother checking. Fucking fine, I'll go check. Rain has let up a bit, but it's still pouring. Head out, round corner looking for noise. Notice massive hole in the fence leading to a little forested area. See something white moving near a dumpster by a fence. Should be wearing glasses, but I lost them a month ago and haven't bought new ones because poor. Spend 1/100th of a second thinking, is that a big garbage bag under the dumpster? That's not a garbage bag. Garbage bags don't have arms. They don't click either. Pick related, it's a shitty map of the area, and then the OP, like he said, provides a map of the area, which is actually really helpful. So he has a little map where he says, me, I guess this is all the orange things are the storage units. There's the trees, the acre of trees, which are to the north of him, I guess. And then the highway to his south. And then he also, in the top right, has it. So whatever it is, the creature I'm guessing, is all the way up there. Now, let me make something clear. I've read Skinwalker and In a Wood stories on here for a long time and know all the tropes. This had none of them. It was the middle of the day. I'm not in some deep forest or ancient tunnel or abandoned farmhouse. I'm in the middle of a small town and can hear traffic on the highway just 300 feet away. I didn't smell any rotting blood or stop hearing the wind or anything. I didn't feel a sense of unease or nervous at all. This was not a setting I expected horror in. Still not convinced I'm in danger, just confused. Try and get a closer look at this thing. Maybe 100 feet away from it. Can see what looks like a big bag of skin under there, but there's this massive white spikes poking out from under it. Keep hearing clicking noises. Hello? Who's that? Immediately regret making yelling out. Why would I do that? This is the kind of thing I get mad at people and other green techs for doing. Typewriter garbage bag thing must have heard me. Something big squeezes out from underneath the dumpster. Massive pile of skin and spiky bits, at least 4 feet tall. It stands up. It is now taller than me, at least 6'5". It looks like if you took a spider, reversed its body, made it pale white, and slapped big pointy arms on it. It has a pointy and angular body type, like a crayfish or a spider, but clearly fleshy instead of hard, except for the tips of its arms and legs. Face is smooth and flat, except for a slit on each side of its head and a recession at the bottom full of little moving things. Didn't get a good look. I think they looked like a crawfish mouth parts. Even from where I am, I can tell it's covered in tons of scratches and bruises. The creature is clearly not happy. It doesn't seem to mind the rain, but every time there's thunder, it flinches hard. Also seems to be spitting up a large amount of water out of its mouth. Imagine it is in the corner seen in the pic. You can kind of see the torn fence, but the dumpster was moved. And yeah, the OP is referring to the picture he included, where you can see right here is the point of view he's talking about, I guess. And I don't know how far away the creature is. I guess the corner where the torn fence is, you can kind of see the torn fence. It's very, very kind of hard to see, but it's good that the OP is providing these pictures. I can hear it fucking clicking loudly now. Not like a bat or dolphin though. It sounded like a typewriter or something flicking a lighter. Start freaking out internally. This is not possible. I live in a decently sized city. There's no forests or swamps or deserts for whatever this is to hide. The forest nearby is like an acre wide. You'd be able to see through it if not for the little hill in the middle. It doesn't give a shit if it's possible. It's moving towards me. Thankfully, it doesn't seem very fast. Quickly think, I don't know what this is. I have no weapons and my car is 100 feet away from the corner. I don't know how fast or dangerous this thing is either. Start slowly backing away. Too scared to let it out of my sight. yelling progressively louder, hoping someone will hear me. Hello? Hello, help. Anyone help, please. It starts moving faster, clicking more rapidly. It moved kind of like a crab with the 6, I think legs at the bottom, moving it around while the 2 arm things were raised up like claws. Try to move faster to get away, but I'm still too terrified to turn away from it. End up awkwardly backwards running into a concrete bollard and fucking up my back. It's moving really quick now. It's about 20 feet away from me. Absolutely terrified, but I grab a loose piece of asphalt and get ready to try and smash it in the weird mouth parts. Suddenly, loud truck horn on the highway nearby. It starts flinching again. Take my chance to cower it out. Throw a rock at its head, miss, and haul ass away. Eventually reach the row of storage units my car is in. Get in, start the engine, peel the fuck out. Get to get of storage complex, no time for codes. Instead, I do something incredibly stupid. Hop out of my car, scale the fence, and start running across the busy highway into a fucking graveyard. Pick mostly unrelated. Funny car I saw there earlier that day. So this is where most of the excitement ends. Instead of turning into another green text, the graveyard was fine. I ran to the nearby church. A little parish office lady let me in and let me use her phone to call the police. Obviously, I didn't tell her that I saw a fucking skin spider monster, but someone with guns needs to get in there ASAP. Tell them I saw a shifty looking man waving a pistol around at the self-storage center. I waited at the chapel for one to arrive and thanked the old lady. The cop asked me some questions and I just gave vague answers. Didn't need to lie about fucking up my back by backing into a concrete bollard though. Apparently, cops found nothing there. There was another guy in the storage area at the time who heard me scream but wasn't able to find me before I ran out of there. I'm not an artist, but I tried to draw what I saw. Sorry for the low quality. And then the OP, draws whatever monster he saw. And this thing looks like an alien of some sort. So he has a human to scale, I guess. And I think he said it was 6'3" or so, but you can see the flaps, not eyes, and that the flaps that open and closed, maybe ears, and then long legs and a weird spider body, bruises and cuts all over. He said mouth parts like a crawfish. No eyes, nose, or any face, perfectly smooth. Very, very weird. Anyways, let's continue. I should mention, I had to go back there today. No rain, was nice and sunny, but even though I reported an armed and dangerous homeless man to the police, my mom still wanted the work done. If I wasn't going to do it, she was. And I'm not sending my own mother to go get eaten alive by a typewriter skin spider, so I tell her I'll go and finish the job. I do it, and it was uneventful. I saw one cop there keeping a lookout who nearly jumped out of his skin when I said hello, but said nothing was wrong. I took a couple of pics for you guys and got the fuck out. No, I'm not going to go investigate the area. I'm not R-worded. All I had to write on for the timestamp was gloves because pandemic. And so this picture does kind of confirm that the OP, wasn't finding these pictures off of the internet or anything. These were authentic pictures taken by the OP. And, it's kind of up for you to decide if you believe he found an alien there or an alien creature. But then the thread continues. One person says, white, no eyes, echolocation, doesn't like loud noises. OP, that's a fucking cave monster. Where on your map did you forget to draw the opening to the hell cave? Someone else says, sounds like a demon. Pretty rare to see ones like that. Definitely echolocation. You said there was no smell? And then the OP responds to these comments saying, no caves. Well, I say no caves, but back when I was around 5, I was friends with an older boy named Joey, who made offhand mentions to a fucking sick cave somewhere nearby. I thought he was full of shit because this is the same Joey who climbed into the tree in my backyard and started talking to convince my dumb ass I had a magic talking tree. I'd ask him for details, but about 15 years ago, he got into some problems with drugs. Broke into my garage to steal my dad's tools, and then him and his family moved away a few months later. And then he replies to the smell question saying, no smell. It was raining pretty hard, though, and I don't doubt I would have been able to smell much anyways. Plus, it never got closer than about 25 feet. And then some other commenter comments with a theory, saying, theory time, it lives in a cave somewhere in that acre of forest. It's clearly flexible, seeing as despite being over 6 feet tall, it's able to squeeze under a dumpster that's probably only a few inches off the ground. Because of this, This entrance to its cave is probably only a couple feet wide, small enough for people to miss. It never comes out because clearly it's adapted to life underground, and if it were to come out, people would have seen it by now considering how small the area is. During the heavy rain, its cave flooded and it was forced to escape. That's most likely where it got all its bruises and cuts from. Once it got to the surface, it started trying to hide under something, hence the dumpster. Since it uses echolocation, it can't detect anything very well in the rain, which is why it didn't hear you until you yelled at it. As you were yelling for help, it could get better and better sense of where you were, so that's why it went faster. After the truck horn stunned it, and he ran off, the sirens of the police probably scared it back into the forested area. How they didn't find it there, if they checked, is beyond me, but if the rain has stopped now, and the water receded, then it's probably back in its cave now. And that was one hell of a theory by a random commenter. But anyways, someone else comments, "Shit, OP, I'm sorry to have to ask this, but I think you gotta get in them woods. At the minimum, put a solar hunting camera out there and just check after it rains again. You can buy them for like $40 at Walmart." And then the thread kind of gets all over the place in the way the screen cap was captured, so I'm going to try my best because now it's just kind of sporadic comments and the OP responding, so I'm just going to try my best. But anyways, someone comments, "OP, no need to hunt or even encounter it. Be like the real field scientist. Place trap cameras around potential cave openings, and obviously, this thing will go straight up trash, so I'd use something rotten and soupy like an old stew and just chum the area. No need to fight it or capture it. Observe, note, plan, and then act." Someone else says, "Interesting story, OP. Instructions below. Bring your boys and go out into the woods to track it down. Start by looking for some cave entrances. If you find any, rig cameras. We believe in you. Also, investigate the dumpster under which it was hiding." And then the OP responds to some of these questions, saying, "Interesting. Thanks for sharing the expertise. Are arthropods flexible? It seemed to be able to fit in that really small space under the dumpster for something that was over 6 feet tall when it stood up. That's actually a super good idea. I'll look into picking one up tomorrow." I think that he's replying to the Walmart camera idea. And then the final one he responds to is, "I'll use mine for scale so the size of both is ambiguous." And like I said, this final screen cap is kind of all over the place, so I'm just kind of reading all the comments and the OP's responses, so sorry about that. But then the OP says, "Sorry, dude, not going to say. I mentioned my mom works for a small telecoms company in my town. There aren't many small telecoms companies in my town, and her name and number is listed on their website. As much as I like hanging out with you guys, I would rather track down the clicking flesh spider and try to kill it with that rock than let anyone on this website contact my mother. It's not far from Chicago, though. On a really clear day, you can see the Sears Tower from there." And this gives us some good insight knowing that the OP is from Chicago. And then the OP posts another kind of comment saying, "For ease of use, I'm not sure. I don't own a gun because commie blue state. The closest thing I have is my grandfather's old police baton from the Chicago riots and an artillery shell from World War II. And then he says, "Interesting. I should point out that this thing definitely didn't seem intelligent or sentient. It just seemed like a stressed and angry animal. Not sure if that helps. I know that no one here actually knows anything about exactly what I saw yesterday, but out of curiosity, can you kill corporeal demons via normal, non-spiritual means?" And then in the thread, there is some pictures of what I assume is the police baton that the OP was talking about, that his grandfather used in World War II for the Chicago riots. And he also puts a picture of his drawing of the creature with click and the X and then the number, so you know it's from the OP. Very interesting police baton. And also there's a screen cap or a picture of Google Earth, apparently where it took place. You can see the storage unit, and you can also see the woods above it, where I don't know what's in those woods, but I guess people are speculating that's where the creature lives. I don't know. And the rest of the thread kind of falls apart. People start making jokes, and we don't really hear from the OP again. But a very interesting thread. I mean, do you believe the OP? He definitely came with receipts of some sort. I mean, he posted pictures of where it took place, and it makes a cult as well. Left the week before I turned 18. I don't particularly want to name it, as though not well known. It can definitely be Googled. And I've been hiding this part of my life too long to be able to open up about it now. A lot of what I read in this post or in the reply sounds familiar. praying, fasting, guilt, prophecy, end times, guilt, isolation, communal living, guilt, thieving, self-loathing, and guilt. A big difference between the OP's experience and the one I was raised in is that S-word was highly encouraged, and that's putting it mildly. Enforced is not the right word, but it's the first one that comes to mind. In my opinion, second-generation cult kids have the absolute worst. We didn't ask for it. We literally didn't know any better. That was our normal. By the time second-generation kids come around, the cult is still new enough that later generations haven't been able to mellow it out either, and small enough that horrible practices and abuse are able to pass under the radar. Abuse was so much a part of my life. Physical, S-word, mental, you name it. That's when I left and started socializing with regular folks. I couldn't process what real socializing, dating, or an active S life really is. I couldn't understand. Couldn't believe it, couldn't accept it. I have been locked in rooms for 3 days and nights to fast and pray. I've been denied contact with other humans for weeks or even months to get closer to God. I was given to men by request. I was once held down by 4 men while a group of maybe a dozen men exorcised me. They believed I was possessed by a demon because of my inability to be like them, to get with the program. I was spanked, beaten, and whipped most of my life. Simply put, I was terrified my entire childhood. I lived every second of my life in fear. Anyway, all this to say, I absolutely understand you and feel for you. And anyone else who has suffered this, and I wish I had advice on how to recover, move on, be free of it. Just remember that you are free of it. They have no power over you anymore. Always remember that and enjoy every damn breath of air you get twice as much as you should, simply because it's a free breath. Good luck. And in case you were wondering, no, I'm absolutely not religious in any way, shape, or form. I believe religion is a cancer. No offense is intended. Some of the details if you are an avid believer. Some disclaimers are, my area is a pretty dangerous area. A lot of gangs and stuff live here, and a lot of crime happens. My garden is surrounded by fences. The back one leads to the main road. I suffer with audible and visual hallucinations. I've been living with my dad for around 3 years now. I have pretty intense mental health issues, so I don't know if I'm being delusional and or detaching from reality. My house is relatively outdated. We have heating that is controlled by a big flame in the center of the house that transport heat through the vents. And the majority of the house is made from wood. The floors, the stairs, which are extremely loud and creak a lot when you walk up and down them. We have 3 rooms upstairs, all connected by one hallway. And in the middle of that hallway, the entrance to the attic is on the ceiling. My father's door is directly across from mine, and the bathroom door is opposite the stairs banister, or railing, or whatever you want to call it. In between both of our rooms, remember that. It started off as me hearing noises, rustling around in the attic, but I figured that a bird had got stuck up there. That has happened before, and the majority of the noises were in the morning, after I wake up, and before I go to sleep. The normal times are around 7 to 9 a.m. and 10 to 11 p.m. I asked my father, and he had thought the same, so I shrugged it off. Around 2 to 3 months ago, the noises are becoming more consistent and common. But again, I shrugged it off and drowned it out with music or YouTube videos whilst on my computer. I wouldn't let my paranoia get to me until one night. I had woken up around 3 a.m. and I could have sworn that I heard footsteps above me. I heard them moving across the attic floor. I could hear where the noises were coming from and where it was located in the attic. I ran into my father's room to wake him up. I'm not sure if we had startled something up there, but the noises stopped, and my father didn't believe me, and he said I was just hearing things. I suffer with audible hallucinations, sometimes visual, so I again shrugged it off, as a little reassurance is all that I needed. I hadn't heard anything for a couple weeks after that, and I'm not sure why. The morning and nightly noises were still persistent, however. We went out one day, me, my father, and my dogs. I had left my PC on. My door was slightly open and the bathroom door was closed. I leave my door open out of habit so my dogs can roam around the house when we are home. However, they do their bathroom in the bathroom, so we close the door while they are home, because we don't want them doing that. We were out for around 3 to 4 hours. We went on a nice walk. When we got back, I headed back upstairs into my room. And the events that happened are in order. I saw that my door was closed. Must have been a draft. Just before I got into my room, my father shouted up the stairs to me. And he had complained that I'd left milk and a packet of meat out of the fridge. I told him that I didn't. It wasn't me. My father is a very logical man. He thinks there's always a logical explanation to everything. So he was confused, but he said he must have done it himself because I was sure that I didn't take anything out of the fridge. Before going into my room after the conversation with my father, I saw that the bathroom light was on and the door was wide open. I went to search around the bathroom, but I couldn't find anything that could be necessarily out of suspicion. As I walked out of the bathroom, remembering that the banister is facing you when you leave the bathroom, I had seen some paint chipped away from the banister, something I have never noticed before. All of this could be explained as coincidence, or maybe I did close my door, open the bathroom door, leave the light on, never noticed paint chipped away on the wooden banisters. Maybe my dad did get some stuff out of the fridge and forgot to put it away. And that's how I thought at the moment. I did not want to believe that someone else was living in our house. But when I entered my room and sat down on my computer, I noticed that it was no longer on the YouTube video and on some European food website which was in English. However, no idea. Other than that, my computer had no other evidence of being tampered with on. Just that food website could have been a pop-up. Things had escalated from there. Me and my father kept hearing weird noises in the night and even during the days, bangs and thuds, etc. My father goes to work 5 days a week. He leaves at 5 a.m. and gets home around 7 p.m. I don't work, and I am home to hear everything. A lot of the times when I'm home, I hear these noises, and my dogs do too, so I know I'm not hallucinating. My dog started sniffing and peeing around the area underneath the attic latch. I have no idea why. My dogs are 3 to 4 years old at this point, both of them, and they've never really peed in a place they haven't before, if that makes sense. One Christmas, my dad had gone on holiday, leaving me on my own in the house for a few weeks, probably the scariest time of my life. I'm an adult. I should be able to defend myself, right? Well, everything was fine for the first few days. It was lovely to have time alone. I cooked a lot, spent a lot of time with my dogs, even made them some nice food too. I had somewhat stockpiled food into my fridge and freezer to last me for a few weeks, meaning I didn't really have to cook much, just to microwave and or defrost the day before. After I had cooked everything, one day had gone by. I noticed small things going missing from the refrigerator every day after waking up. I had these snack/bite-sized cheese wheels that I hadn't opened, but were open. Some of the food I made was going missing, and I was running out of milk a lot faster than I could have imagined. This persisted for around 3 days before I called a friend to come and stay downstairs. I explained the situation to him, and he was more than happy to stay on the couch for a few days to somewhat protect me. He's not scared of much, and he's very strong. About 10 minutes, whispering at most. We heard the noises, extremely close to the latch of the attic, almost like a scratching noise. Perving on his wife. I, 38 male, just found out that my brother, 19 male, has been perving on my wife, 37 female. Throwaway, cause I'm still the only one that knows. Some background. My brother has been staying with us since the lockdown, after his university closed. He couldn't stay with our parents cause they just sold the house and moved into a 1-bedroom apartment, and our sister lives in a different part of the country. He was the oops baby, so I hope that explains the age gap. My wife and I have a 5-bedroom home, but currently don't have any children yet. We decided to adopt 2 kids in our 40s, so we let him stay here. My brother has always been different. He's a bit of a loner and doesn't have a lot of friends outside of his online group. He's a shy, geeky kid, but he's otherwise alright, or so I thought, when you get to know him. So here's what happened. The Wi-Fi doesn't quite reach my brother's room, so he usually does his schoolwork and other stuff in the dining room. A few nights ago, I was walking to the fridge after waking up in the middle of the night. Wife and I sleep early, and saw my brother working on something out, and as I got closer, I saw a very compromising picture of my wife. Cleavage shot as she was gardening. He noticed me and quickly closed the window like he was watching adult videos. I was too shell-shocked to say anything at the time, and he just smiled awkwardly and ran to his room with the laptop. When I realized that something was up, I knew I had to find out. The next day, I asked my brother to pick up some groceries and some lunch for us, and while he was away, I went to his room, something I've never done since he moved in. And well, it wasn't pretty. I saw a couple of my wife's bras and some of her underwear, which I can only assume he used to possibly pleasure himself. I took his laptop and F it, decided to snoop. I knew his password because I borrowed his Crunchyroll account to watch this anime my friend recommended. I don't usually watch anime. There, I saw some of the most sickening entries I have ever read. There were pictures of my wife in a towel, her working out, her in compromising positions, etc. All taken without her consent by the looks of it. He even logs every time he touches himself to the image of my wife. The creepiest part? He sometimes listens in on us when we have intimacy. My wife can be a bit loud, but we didn't think it would be a problem since his bedroom was in a different part of the house. Guess bedroom. I left the room feeling like I needed to shower. It was absolutely disgusting. Now I don't know what to do. I find myself fighting the urge to pummel him into next week every time I see him. I haven't told my wife yet because I'm 100% sure she will feel violated and disgusted, so I want to find the best solution first before doing so. I so desperately want to kick him out, but he has nowhere else to go. Even if I do, what should I tell my parents? The truth? This will most likely break the family apart. I do plan on telling my wife soon, but if I do, I can almost guarantee she would want nothing to do with him and would never want to visit the family if he's around. I'm so lost right now. Any advice will help. Still fighting the urge to beat my brother to a bloody pulp. Edit, if you're wondering, I did take pictures as proof. Small update, I told my wife. The Redditors who said I should tell her first before anything else because she was the victim were absolutely right. I'm giving her all the power to decide what to do about it. A lot has happened, but there are still things that need to be settled. Too long to add here, and too incomplete to make a new update post. Hopefully we'll have everything settled tomorrow or the day after. I'll write the update once everything is settled and I calm down. No, I'm not going to beat up my brother, but I have thought about it. And to the people asking for the pictures, you're disgusting. Hope the women in your life are proud of you. That's my wife. Please have some respect. And now let's get into some of the top comments on this post. Someone says, this is extremely disturbing behavior, and he might not even realize the gravity of what he's doing. Though he does know that he can't be caught doing what he's doing. I think you guys need to have a talk. Maybe in the car, one-on-one. You need to tell him how you saw the gardening photo, went and found your wife's undergarments in his room, and the entries, etc. There might even be more things you don't even know about. He'll probably try to refute part of this by saying you invaded his privacy by going into his room, but legally, it is your house, and you had rightful suspicions. Not sure what the legal case is for logging into someone's laptop though. This would be an upsetting conversation for me to have personally, but try to control your emotions. I'd tell him that this needs to be stopped immediately, or he has to leave. Conversely, if you feel like you can't keep this from your wife, or you simply can't stand to have him around anymore, then I think you're completely justified in kicking him out. Either way, I think it's important to call out this behavior. He may have been doing this with other people in his life, girls at his university, or maybe just getting started. This could be the wake-up call to stop being a perv. And the OP responds and says, he's 100% leaving either way. I can't keep this from my wife, and she will definitely want him out, as I do too. The only concern here is what it might potentially do to our family. Sister will most likely take my side, but I don't know what my mom and dad will think. Family gatherings are going to be here from now on, and there's no way I'm letting him back once he leaves. And then we don't get an update for a few weeks, but we finally get an update, and let's get into it. This update was long overdue, so I apologize to everyone who waited for this. I've had daily messages asking me about what happened, and now that I'm in a better place to actually talk about it, I can tell everyone about what happened. First of all, thank you to the Redditors who pointed out that I should tell my wife first before confronting my brother. You were right. She did appreciate the fact that I gave her control over the situation. I told my wife the next day after posting, and needless to say, she did not take it well. She says she feels violated and unsafe in her own home. See, the thing is, my wife and I have been together for almost 15 years, so we literally saw this kid grow up. We took him out to the movies, to the beach, etc. We sometimes even joked to my parents that he was our practice baby. My wife has a tendency to distrust people in general, as a lot of people in her life have let her down in the past. Imagine how hurt and betrayed she was when she found out someone she trusted and loved dearly betrayed her like that. Honestly, if I wasn't consoling my wife then, I probably would have gone through with the initial idea and beat the ever-living crap out of my brother. After she calmed down and went to sleep, I called my sister and talked about the situation. My sister and I are close, given that we're Irish twins. I feel like she needs to know because she has 2 teenage daughters herself, and who knows what my brother would do to them if given the chance. We talked and she was clearly mad. She loves my wife like a sister, and they're quite close themselves. She said she would support whatever decision we make, and that our brother would also be unwelcome at her place for the foreseeable future. Then we confronted my brother. At first he denied it, but when we showed him the evidence, he started ugly crying and begging us to forgive him. I gave him an ultimatum. Either he lets me in his phone, laptop, and delete everything, or I call the police. There was so much more shit on his computer than I initially thought. So many more stolen pictures of my wife that were definitely taken without consent. He even recorded the audio of us having intimacy. Who does that? So after hours of me looking for as much stuff as possible, and pretty much clearing out most of his hard drive, he eventually left without much of a fight. Oh, and we definitely threw out my wife's defiled underwear, and are most likely going to have the room he stayed in cleaned professionally. I checked, and thankfully, he didn't have any hidden cameras anywhere. Oh, and if you're wondering how we got pictures of my wife in a towel, the shower for the masters doesn't have hot water yet, so my wife used the share one in the same area. She would usually walk out of the bathroom with just a towel and go change in our walk-in closet. This shouldn't have been a problem because the guest room was in a different part of the house, far from the main bedrooms, and it had its own bathroom, so my brother had no reason for being there. Needless to say, my wife is still shaken up about the whole thing, which is why I didn't think about writing an update until right now. I'm sorry, but my wife's well-being is my priority above everything else. My mom eventually called me asking what happened. She seemed very confused, so I figured my brother didn't tell her anything at all. I told her what happened, and needless to say, It did not end well. She kept asking me to forgive my brother and take him back. She ranted about how difficult it would be to support him and how what I'm doing is breaking the family apart. I let her talk until I eventually said my brother would no longer be welcome in my home. I told her that she needed to get him therapy and that until then, there is no chance we would ever see him. My mom told me she talked to my sister about it, and I said, good luck. She's mad at him too. Not sure what's going to happen to our family now. The reason why we got the big house was because we wanted everyone to come over during the holidays and stay with us, but I'm not sure if my parents will at this point, and there's no chance my brother is ever coming back anytime soon. Thankfully, my sister is 100% on my side, and we're going to talk about what we're doing for Thanksgiving soon. My wife hasn't really been the same either, but she's getting better now that my brother is gone. We're talking about therapy, which is something she's very willing to try out. We took a drive to the beach earlier. Chill guys, we didn't leave the car, and talked about the future. We both agreed that after this whole pandemic thing is over, we're going to finally start our family with kids. We want two. Being a mom is something she always wanted, but we both wanted to be financially secure enough to give them a good life, and for us to be in a good position where we didn't have to work so much and just spend time with them. The sparkle in her eyes when we talked about our life together with kids told me that while things aren't good right now, we're going to be okay. I honestly can't wait to be a dad myself. So yeah, long story short, my brother is gone. Wife is still sad. Sister is on my side, but mom isn't, and I'm going to be a dad in a few years. Thanks to everyone who gave me their advice. It honestly helped me clear my head and make the right decision to tell my wife first. Oh, and to answer questions that may come up, no, we did not go to the police. My brother deleted everything voluntarily and left without a trace. I'm sure the pictures are still out there somewhere, but thankfully, they aren't too explicit that it would severely damage my wife's reputation. And no, we aren't going to try and get pregnant or anything like that. We plan on adopting, which is something we both talked about early on. So again, thanks to everyone who messaged and commented. I may not have read everything, nor have I replied to everyone, but rest assured, you are all greatly appreciated. And that is the last update we have ever gotten from the OP. My new boss that I've never met asked me to come to their neighbor says they saw a tent in my living room. I honestly don't know what to make of this. The simplest answer is that my neighbor is lying. But why? Here's what happened. This morning, my neighbor knocked on my door and told me that while I was out of town earlier this month, they noticed my front door was open and that a very nice blue and brown two-person tent had been pitched in the middle of my living room. They said they thought it was a little odd, and that's why they mentioned it. I was on vacation over the 4th of July, and my nephew and another neighbor both fed my cat while I was gone. Neither are the type to pitch a tent in my living room, though to be honest, I'm not sure who would do such a thing. Nevertheless, I asked them about the tent, and neither knew anything about it. I also don't have anything that's blue and brown and could be mistaken for a tent. My living room is mostly black and white. I also don't own a tent. I'm not a camper. Nobody has a set of keys to my house. I have an Arlo camera by my front door, and I set one up in my living room while I was gone so that I could periodically check in on the cat. I'm a little neurotic about her because she is very old. I checked all the footage, and going back to June 4th, because my neighbor couldn't say for certain when exactly they saw the tent, needless to say, there's nothing captured by either camera. And also the OP just mentioned June 4th and July 4th, so I don't know when the OP was gone. I assume that was just a typing error, but let's just assume July 4th. So anyways, unfortunately, the cameras do sometimes fail to capture everything. I'd say that they have a 10 to 20% fail rate when it comes to turning on when there's movement. So there's a slight possibility someone could have entered my house, pitched a tent, taken it down, and left, and the cameras wouldn't have caught any of it. but I feel like it's a pretty slim chance that neither would have been triggered. To add to all of this, my cat has been acting super strange ever since I came back. She's very nervous, refuses to go anywhere near the back part of the house, and is not using her litter box. So something did weird her out. So Reddit, any ideas? If my neighbor is lying, which is the most plausible, why? They've never lied before and always seemed like a reliable narrator. They also said their boyfriend saw it too and mentioned how weird it was. Is there any scenario where it makes sense for someone to break in and pitch a tent but also leave the door open so anyone can see? Is it a glitch in the Matrix? Is she somehow suffering from carbon monoxide poisoning? Am I? Thankfully, the Arlo camera outside did capture part of our conversation, so I didn't completely imagine it. It's just so fucking bizarre. I'm just at a complete loss. The whole thing has left me feeling unsettled. Edit. Thanks to everyone who's commented so far. To answer a sum of questions that seem to have come up. Number 1. I took the cat to the vet and she got a clean bill of health. I'm trying some behavioral solutions, multiple litter pans, special cat food for urine health, calming cat treats, calming spray, Fellaway plug-in, etc. It's been hard, but I'm committed to helping her get through this. Number 2. The neighbor and her boyfriend are both older, I think in their late 60s, and we live on the same property, so she has to walk by my front door to get to the street. I'd say from the walkway to my front door is less than 5 feet, so she has a pretty good view of my living room. I agree with those who said her timing is strange. Why mention it weeks later? But I had recently talked to her about my cat's behavior, so I think she mentioned it as a possible reason for the cat's behavior. She did say, maybe in the future, you should let me know you'll be out of town so I can keep an eye out for you. At the time, it sounded like a normal thing to say. But if she's lying, then maybe it's because she wants to know when I'm gone? Number 3. My nephew is in his mid-20s and very responsible. He owns his own home and works long days. Neither he nor his brother are campers and, as far as I know, don't own any tents. The camera outside captured him entering and exiting all 3 days, and he was in the house for less than 5 minutes. Same with the other neighbor who fed the cat. She came over 3 times, all for less than 5 minutes. Neither was aware of where the camera was inside, but they knew I had one so I could check the cat. The camera also caught the cat chilling out in the house, and all 3 days she was acting normally. And before we get into number 4, I have to clarify what frogging means. So frogging is the practice of secretly living in someone else's home without their knowledge. Named after how frogs hop from one place to another, a person who frog may do so to avoid paying rent, due to homelessness, or for other reasons, often hiding in unused parts of the house like crawl spaces, attics, or walls. And so, that's pretty disturbing. But anyways, let's get on to number 4 because she learns about frogging. She says there is a crawl space under the house, but you can't access it from inside. There's probably a 2-foot high crawl space in the ceiling that you can't access from the closet in my bedroom, but I have a bunch of boxes and suitcases shoved up against the opening, and I don't see how someone could put them back if they'd crawled back in. I will say that the more I ruminate on it, the creepier it seems. Update. So I spoke to all my neighbors again today. The neighbor who saw the tent is still adamant that's what she saw. She said she and her boyfriend saw it around lunchtime and he confirmed. They said the tent was up when they went to lunch and down by the time they came back. When I told her my cameras didn't catch anything, she was unbothered. When suggested that maybe she saw something else, she said, "It was not my imagination. I saw a tent from right here." And then she stood on the walkway and pointed into my house. She seems to think someone might have had a copy of my key and is accessing my house whenever I'm out of town. She thinks someone sabotaged both cameras and mentioned black suits that aren't picked up by security cameras. As a reason, the tent sector wasn't caught. She also mentioned that my other neighbor, the one who checked on my cat, had a large white tent in her yard a few months back. I saw that tent and can verify it existed, but this neighbor said that is not the tent she saw in my house. I rechecked all the camera footage one more time. There are no unaccounted for gaps. In fact, there are several snippets of the cat chilling in the living room, looking completely unconcerned before and after the cat sitters came into the house. It's actually making me rethink the timeline of when she got spooked. I rechecked the attic access and it hasn't been touched. I also work from home, so it would be hard for someone squatting in the attic to go unnoticed. I also took the advice here to check internet data and electricity usage. Both were way down on the days I was gone. My gas bill was smaller as well, but if the tent was only up for an hour, well, that makes sense. So then I spoke with cat-sitting neighbor. She confirmed the existence of her white tent and explained that she was airing it out in her front yard after a camping trip, which aligns with all the tent care information in the comments. She also said that she has had similar conversations with this neighbor where what she is saying is bizarre and unsettling, but she says it with such conviction that you find it hard not to believe. She also understood my unease, saying the whole story reminded her of the Manson family and their creepy crawling. And this opens up a whole big can of worms. So basically, if you don't know who the Manson family is, it was a cult and they did some creepy stuff, killed people, that sort of stuff. That's an even bigger can of worms. But basically, they did things called creepy crawling, or burglary missions that they called creepy crawling. And during these outings or missions, quote unquote, members would sneak into random homes while the occupants of the house were sleeping, and they would move furniture or household items around, and then occasionally steal small belongings. So they just did things like they just moved stuff around, which is so creepy to me. How they didn't really steal stuff, but they just kind of were pranking people and trying to disorient people and be like, well, I don't remember my chair being there. And then it's across the room. And so, I mean, super weird, but they did that. And so, yeah, this does kind of sound like it with OP, what's OP's saying. But yeah, the Mansons did that. And that's a whole other can of worms, like I said. But hopefully that makes sense to what OP is referring to. But anyways, back to the post. Once she mentioned that possibility, it made me understand why I was feeling so anxious. I have read about the creepy crawling in the Manson family was a boogie monster for me growing up. For those worried about my cat's well-being, thank you. She seems to be slowly coming back to herself. Right now, I'm putting her in the kitchen at night and she has a cozy little bed where she sleeps. So far, she hasn't peed anywhere inside since I've started doing this. But I do wake up before 6 every morning to let her out, and she promptly uses the litter pan I have set up for her on the porch. I also started using the urinary health cat food from Royal Canin that someone suggested on another thread, and that seems to be working. Fingers crossed. To end on a lighter note, cat-sitting neighbor also had a whimsical explanation, not to be taken seriously and just for fun, that I also thought I'd share. Apparently, there's a Japanese folklore tradition of trickster raccoons who shapeshift and wreak havoc. She pointed out that it is a raccoon season where we live, and in fact, I just saw a mother and her babies by my porch a couple of nights ago, and maybe they snuck in and pitched the tent just to mess with me. I mean, it's as probable as anything else at this point. Next steps, asking the landlords to change the locks. Second update. This update will probably be more than a little anticlimactic, and for that, I apologize. To the people who felt like this was much ado about nothing, I agree. But like I said before, it's her continued insistence and certainty about this bizarre idea that bugs me. So here we go. Number 1, the boyfriend does indeed exist. I've met him and spoken with him several times. He seems older than her and is quieter overall. He has stated that he's a cat person and has engaged with my cat in the past, but I have not had the chance to talk to him separately to get his side of the story. Number 2, the white tent was in the front yard of my other neighbor's house and faces the opposite street, so a reflection is impossible. That being said, the older neighbor does keep bringing it up and is convinced people were sleeping in it. I've spoken with the front yard neighbor and she was airing out the tent after a camping trip. No one ever slept in it when it was in her yard. But I think a lot of folks in the comments are correct when they say the white tent unsettled the older neighbor because she brought it up several times. Number 3, I did loop in the landlord, but they seem to also believe the older neighbor. She's rented from them for at least 15 years, if not longer. And they told me that in the past, she's been very reliable and truthful. They seemed spooked by the whole story and offered to change the locks. I figure it can't hurt, so I agreed. Number 4. The landlords and I questioned the older neighbor pretty rigorously, and she stuck by her story even as we all expressed incredulity. She reiterated that she saw a 2-person tent, blue and white, fully erected in my front living room. She said it was not a pop-up tent or pup tent. She said she saw it on a Wednesday because that's the day her boyfriend takes her to lunch each week. She said it was up when he picked her up and down when he dropped her off. She got a little defensive as we probed, so people who warned that this could happen if we challenged her were spot on. She kept reiterating that it was a tent and that she could see it quite clearly. She seems to want to pin it to my nephew, and the landlords seem to be leaning that way too, which is really frustrating. He's a 25-year-old man with his own home. He has no need to air a tent out in my tiny living room, and he doesn't even camp. Number 5, the cameras. I double-checked every Wednesday for the last 2 months. That's the limit for these stored videos. No tent, no people entering my house, no footage of her and her boyfriend staring into my house. That being said, there's one Wednesday with no footage because the battery had died and I forgot to charge it. But I was home. There's only one Wednesday that I went out of town, but I left after 4 p.m. and returned in less than 24 hours. I still feel like this is pretty solid evidence of no tent, but I have to allow for the fact that the cameras were not fully operational. Number 6, the cat is slowly getting better, though we had a setback today when she peed in the kitchen after the gardener scared her. She is consistently using the litter pan I set up for her outside with no problem. She just refuses to use any litter pan anywhere inside. I have one in the kitchen, one by the front door, one in the pantry, and one in the bathroom. She will only use the one outside. I do think the calming food is helping since we're down to just one accident and it was on the puppy pads. I'm keeping her in the kitchen at night and letting her out before 6 a.m. every day. Hopefully, I can eventually get her to use her litter pan inside. Number 7, raccoon season. I think my front neighbor used this phrase because it's baby season right now. We have a mom and 2 kits that hang out in our property. If you've never seen a baby raccoon, you're missing out. They are adorable. So like I said at the beginning, not much of a resolution. At this point, I just want to put the whole thing to rest. I'm changing the locks, so if there are mystery indoor campers or mischievous raccoons with a copy of my key, they'll have to find another locale for their shenanigans. I'll stop questioning the neighbor because she's adamant and now it feels a little weird to keep harping on it. I'll endeavor to be patient and kind to my cat so that she gets back to her old self. And that's the end of that saga. So what are your thoughts? Do you think it's possible that someone was camping in OP's living room and the neighbor just saw it and then told her about it? I mean, it's a very weird situation. I mean, the cat acting weird after the fact, that's weird. The camera kind of going out the part of the time, that's also weird. But her also being able to disprove it kind of helps play against the case that there was some sort of tent camper in there. Or do you think the neighbor is just crazy and wanting to make the neighbor paranoid or something? I mean, I have no clue. It's very, very weird though, and I just don't know who to believe. I mean, who do you believe? Do you believe the neighbor who keeps telling her, hey, you have a tent in your living room, or you did when you're gone? Or do you think OP is the sane one? And it's like, well, I mean, there's no reason for someone to do that unless, I mean, you never know. I mean, I really don't know. I mean, I don't know. It's very weird. I would be a little bit paranoid after, but hopefully she changes her locks and has no other creepy encounters or anything like that in the future. But very interesting post and unexplainable, but very interesting. And on to the next one. OP lockdown in a woods. Not gonna green text because I'm bad at it. Peak meme flu lockdown. I got stir crazy sitting around all day, collecting unemployment like a fucking leech, so I decided to head in the woods. I live in a deep blue state, so I figured my chances of running into anyone out there were slimmer than usual. My intention was to camp out for a week or so and relax, hike around, do anything but sit inside all day like everyone else in the state. I drove the 3 hours to my favorite national forest, up an old logging road. I took my M1 carbine, pick related, different trip, and Remington 870 Magnum. The drive up was really nice since there was no one on the road and gas was super cheap. I got there in record time. I set up camp about an hour off the main road. I wasn't exactly super deep, but I was deep enough in the woods to be satisfied. The first night was normal. The second night I woke up at around 2 a.m. to silence, and then what sounded like a blood-curdling shriek, which my rational brain told me was a mountain lion about 2 seconds later. It must have screamed before and woken me up. I listened intently for a few minutes, but didn't hear it again and fell back asleep. The next day was weird. The forest was silent. Previously, there had been birds singing, bugs chirping, wind in the trees, etc. Now everything was just still and silent in the cold morning air. I just got some coffee started and tried not to think about it. Eventually, the day warmed up, and yet the sound didn't return. I started to think maybe that mountain lion was still in the area. Woods tend to go silent when there's a predator nearby, but that didn't explain the complete lack of wind. The air felt as stagnant as a hot car, except it was 40 degrees out. I decided to have a look around. I hadn't gone more than half a mile in any direction away from camp since I'd gotten there. I threw on a jacket and my Alice LBE. I had rigged with M1 carbine mag pouches that kind of worked. I went in the direction I remembered the noise coming from the previous night, hiking cross country. The woods were silent the whole way. Hell, I didn't even hear any airplanes fly overhead, and this was a pretty high traffic area. I hiked across a largish clearing with scattered groups of trees when I noticed something odd. A couple of the pines were missing all of their limbs. They weren't charred from a wildfire, but looked as though they'd been torn off. They stood around 20 yards apart, jutting skyward, almost like a gate. I thought it was kind of weird, but chalked it up to loggers or something. When I crossed the gate, it felt like a switch was flicked. I was suddenly hit with a wall of anxiety, the kind I hadn't felt since I was a teenager. I felt the adrenaline rush of someone being mugged. My knees threatened to buckle, and I felt cold sweat run down the hollow of my back. I was shocked and confused at my reaction, but took a moment to collect myself before advancing, unslinging my rifle and keeping it in the low ready, mostly to bring myself comfort. I wouldn't walk 30 more yards before coming across a deer carcass that had been absolutely eviscerated. It looked like it had been hit by a truck, then run over by a whole convoy, except it was in the middle of the forest, nowhere near a road. The area reeked of death. I decided it was time to head back to camp. I figured I'd confirmed the presence of a cougar and considered moving camp. Getting tired, gonna give the abridged ending and wrap it up so I can go to bed. I made my way back to camp a little more quickly than I had left, scanning my surroundings, far more alert than before. I knew I was being irrational, but I couldn't help but feel a bit scared. Everything was adding up to spell something weird. First, the complete lack of noise that was still present, or rather not pleasant. Then the trees, then the strange anxiety, and now the mutilated deer. I was creeped out. Something wasn't quite right. As I crested a ridge, I was greeted with a sight that sent a spike of adrenaline through my system. Another deer carcass, right where I'd hiked through before. I was sure this wasn't here before. This one looked as bad as the last, with the sickening addition of one of its antlers speared through its eye socket. I decided right there that I'd be cutting my trip short. I hauled ass back to camp, tore down everything as quickly as possible, made my way down the shitty logging roads as quickly as I could without fucking my suspension up, and left. I'm still not really sure what was going on there. I'm not going to pull that bullshit you always see on here and say, I'm not a believer in the paranormal because that's bullshit. I totally am. But I'd like to exhaust my rational explanations first. I really want to believe it was just a mountain lion. And I just didn't notice the second carcass somehow, but it just doesn't make sense. but would calling it a skinwalker be a reach? I've been on this board too long and read too many nope threads. Am I just overthinking it? I guess I'll never know. But it hasn't stopped me from going back to that same forest to fuck around in the woods. Just never alone anymore.